I've played a lot of PC games from classic to modern, and throughout time, there's been some standout games that have impressed me. That being said, I am a tough critic, and when you've played as wide of a variety of games from as wide of a time frame as I have, you'll get a mixed bag of recommendations from me, be it a text adventure from the 1980s to a recent indie game. You never know what I'll suggest. That being said, today we're going to talk about 10 more games you should check out on the PC. Let's begin. King's Quest III is the moment Sierra looked at the adventure genre and said, you know what? Enough whimsy. Let's emotionally waterboard the player. You're not royalty, you're not heroic, you're not even important. You play as a kid named Gwydion. You're kidnapped, enslaved, and forced to clean up after a wizard who treats household chores like federal crimes. Manannan, the wizard who is basically your captor, doesn't just punish mistakes, he hunts for them. You're constantly timing your movement around his errands, listening for audio cues, calculating risk like you're running a medieval speedrun. Every action has that "wait a minute, my boss just walked in" panic baked into it. Outside the house, classic Sierra. Cliffs that kill you for looking at them wrong, puzzles so literal they might as well come with legal disclaimers, and enemies who are basically walking game over buttons. But the payoff, the moment you've mastered the spells, hidden the evidence, and finally turned those forbidden incantations against that old fucker, it's pure catharsis. It's not just beating a game, it's escaping an abuser. Cruel, clunky, unforgettable, peak Sierra when they still had their fangs out. You know, I talk a lot about Sierra-era games because to me, they were the foundation of what the adventure genre became in the 80s and the 90s. They walked so every other studio could sprint. What's magical about their contribution is that everyone remembers a Sierra game, even if they've never actually played one. These games existed in the collective consciousness. One developer in particular took that legacy to heart. Under the label Postmodern Adventures, they grabbed the grit of Police Quest, the grounded storytelling of classic Sierra titles, and shaped it into Urban Witch Story, a point-and-click adventure set in Los Angeles during the LA riots. It was built in AGS, or the Adventure Game Studio Engine, the same framework fans have used for decades to create their own spiritual successors to King's Quest, Space Quest, and more. And it was recognized. Urban Witch Story won 6 AGS awards: Best Game Created with AGS, Best Freeware Game, Best Writing, Best Gameplay, Best Background Art, and Best Music and Sound. It absolutely cleaned house. Now in the game you play as a police officer navigating a turbulent Los Angeles, trying to solve a string of violent crimes targeting local sex workers. An old friend has gone missing, and to uncover what happened, you're forced to retrace your past, walking a razor-thin line between your duty as a cop and the streets that shaped you. It's a wonderfully fun game, and I do suggest that everyone checks it out. Enchanter is Infocom at its smartest. The moment they said, what if a text adventure actually made you feel powerful instead of confused? Instead of hoarding inventory junk, you collect spells, actual vocabulary that interacts with the world in conceptual ways. Everything feels like bending language to your own will. It's a kind of problem solving that rewards creativity. You're not just unlocking doors, you're rewriting the rules of the room. And that moment when you recall a spell from hours earlier and realize this is what it was secretly meant for, that is pure Infocom dopamine. But it's not hand-holdy, if that makes sense. Infocom assumes that you're clever, sometimes too clever. And because of that, they will challenge that assumption in the next room. It's teasing, playful, occasionally smug, but never unfair if you're paying attention. Enchanter doesn't just tell a story, it builds a world out of verbs, logic, and confidence in the player. Space Quest 4 feels like the devs took one look at their own franchise and said, you know what, let's roast ourselves before the fans beat us to it. Roger Wilco gets thrown through time, crashing into future sequels, including ones that didn't even exist when the game was released. You wander through dystopian futures, neon-soaked parodies, and literal rewrites of the earliest, roughest Space Quest worlds. The whole game feels like a meta joke told in 256 colors. The CD-ROM version elevates it into legendary territory thanks to Gary Owen's narration. He describes your terrible mistakes with the same gravitas he'd use for a national tragedy. It adds this beautiful contrast between high drama and Roger being, well, Roger. And yes, you die constantly, but here, death is the punchline. Space Quest 4 is a sci-fi comedy roast you get to play, a game and on its own joke. Realms of the Haunting is the kind of game that feels like it escaped from an alternate timeline. It splices together FPS action, point-and-click puzzles, occult storytelling, and FMV cinematics that are way more committed than they have any right to be. You explore a shifting haunted mansion, slipping between dimensions, fighting demons, discovering lore that feels like it belongs in a graduate thesis on fucking metaphysics. Then every so often, an FMV character pops in with a monologue that toes the line between brilliant and did we break into community theater? And somehow, it all works. The atmosphere is oppressive, the mystery keeps unraveling into deeper layers, and the sense of place is so strong you start mapping rooms in your head. It's experimental, messy, and totally unique, the kind of game that shouldn't exist, but you're kinda glad that it does. Celeste is one of those rare games where mechanics and message fuse seamlessly. You play as Madeline climbing Mount Celeste, a physical mountain, sure, but also a metaphor for anxiety, intrusive thoughts, and the exhaustive process of fighting yourself. The platforming is tight enough to tune a piano. Every death is instant restart, no shame, no delay. The game encourages persistence rather than punishing failure, which is something you see with a lot of those indie rage bait games like Getting Over It, Baby Steps, Super Meat Boy, the works. It teaches resilience through repetition in a way that never feels preachy, if that makes sense. The music is a huge part of it. Lena Raine's score pulses with emotion, elevating tense escapes and quiet moments alike. Sometimes it feels like the soundtrack is breathing with you. Celeste isn't about conquering your demons, it's about learning to climb with them. Oh man, the Oregon Trail. Well, one thing I can tell you is that the Oregon Trail wasn't designed as entertainment. It was meant to teach kids about westward expansion, but in the process it invented half the survival mechanics that modern games rely on. Behind the jokes about dysentery and drowning in 2 feet of water is a surprisingly complex system. You're managing food scarcity, disease, weather, stamina, risk, and an entire party who insists on dying at the worst possible times. The hunting minigame, it's absolute chaos. The river crossings, absolute betrayal. And the random deaths, comedy gold. It's resource management disguised as history, and somehow it's still fun decades later. A pioneer simulator that accidentally birthed a whole genre. We all know Doom. Doom was incredibly important to the foundation of the FPS genre that we know of today. But one of the magical things about Doom is that so many people have gone out of their way to create WADs or custom maps, and that's what Myhouse.wad is. This game bait and switches you perfectly. It begins as a Doom map someone made in tribute to a friend, a normal suburban home, cozy, familiar, and then the walls start lying. Rooms loop in impossible spaces, angles bend, the tone shifts from nostalgia to something unnervingly personal. You're not shooting demons anymore, you're navigating grief shaped into architecture. It's psychological horror built from limitations, pixelated liminal spaces, dream logic geometry, and a story told through omission as much as detail. Every new layer feels like falling deeper into someone else's memories, or maybe even their nightmares. It's a masterpiece in the modding scene, and one of the most quietly devastating games ever built in Doom. The original wand of Gamelon was a meme before memes existed. It was the poster child of how in the fuck did this get approved? Gaming infamy baked into every frame. So when the remaster arrived, polished, faithful, and actually good, it felt like discovering a parallel universe. The controls are responsive, animations are refined instead of cursed, the pacing makes sense. It's not just playable now, and I say that with air quotes. It's legitimately enjoyable, and you can finally see what the original creative direction might have looked like without the CDI hardware dragging it down. It's gaming archaeology uncovering the game that always wanted to exist under the rubble. A strange, delightful reclamation project.
See a blonde-haired boy.
This game is incredibly important to me. I suffer from borderline personality disorder, and one of the issues that stem from that is always feeling like I need to impress somebody. It's something I deal with every single day. And to me, the Artful Escape is the embodiment of borderline personality disorder. It's pure audiovisual liberation, a glowing neon exhale of creativity. Francis Vendetti's journey isn't about saving the world, it's about realizing that he doesn't have to fit the mold everyone else built for him. The landscapes explode with impossible colors and cosmic creatures, your guitar riffs literally reshape reality. Every level looks like it was painted by a rock god on a psychotropic vision quest. The game isn't challenging at all, and I feel that that's done on purpose because it wants you to experience it. The message is what matters, and it's simple and it's powerful. Finding your voice isn't about living up to expectations, it's about discovering the version of yourself that you've been afraid to show. It's a musical coming-of-age story wrapped in stardust. And that's it for today's episode. What did you think of this list? Are there any PC games that people should play? Feel free to let the community know down in the comments section below. Speaking of our community, if you made it to the end of this episode, you're already home with us. We're a gathering of video game enthusiasts that love to remember when life was just a little bit easier to live. And if you align with that, feel free to subscribe. Finally, the single most important thing you could do for me is to hit that thumbs up button, as it directly impacts the visibility of the videos and the projects that I work on every single day. As always, from my family to your family, good energy, good vibes. Fortifier out.